Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you. The Morning Majority, 630.
WMAL. 7:07 on the Morning Majority, and we are still trying to figure out McConnell's deal, right?
Yeah, I'm scratching my head.
We're reading, and we're studying, and we're trying to figure it out.
What's interesting is that it would take 2/3 of the Senate and the House to essentially overturn the president's ability to raise the debt ceiling, and then he would have to have cuts almost equal to the amount that he wants to raise.
And there's no path to implementing the cuts. That's what, he has to write it down, which is sort of interesting. You'd actually get to see what Obama's thinking, which you don't get to see that. He talks a lot, but you don't get to see what he actually wants to do. But then what's the path? Can't the whole House or Senate just balk and go, we're not cutting all that? We don't like these things he's cutting. I mean, I just don't see how you actually get to a cut.
Yeah, and it would be 2/3, so there's no way it's going to happen. So essentially, it just gives the president the ability to do that, and he's going to have to say he's going to cut, and you're going to have to say, all right, we'll figure it out.
I think the McConnell plan is DOA because nobody in the House is going to go for it.
The New York Times likes it.
There you go.
New York Times likes it.
That's all I needed to hear.
Mitch McConnell likes it, obviously. Grover Norquist didn't seem to be too concerned about it, although he's kind of walked it back a little bit.
Yeah, but
there are other conservatives who say it's a terrible idea. Newt Gingrich panned it. I know that last night as well.
And so who wants to hook the balanced budget amendment to this?
Orrin Hatch was talking about that last night. He essentially said he can't vote for raising the debt ceiling at all unless it's attached to a balanced budget amendment. And he says, and I tend to agree with him on this, that's the only way this problem can be fixed in the future. And for looking forward, you have to have a balanced budget amendment. If you force Congress to balance the budget every single year, then you're not going to run up deficits, and therefore you're not going to add to the debt.
Yes, there has to be some kind of long-term solution that they're locked into.
Although I guess the question is that the end-all, be-all? I mean, would even those Republicans in the House get on board with raising the debt ceiling in exchange for a balanced budget amendment? I mean, that's something Marco Rubio did talk about. Maybe you were at that long op-ed piece in the, not necessarily long op-ed piece, but he had a whole list of things that he needed to happen in order to raise the debt ceiling. Well, one of them was a balanced budget amendment. Is that the end-all, be-all? And is that something that House Republicans, who say they're not going to raise the debt ceiling no matter what, would get on board with in exchange for actually having to force Congress to balance the budget? And you know what? Is that going to fix the problem as well? I mean, there are a lot of states that have balanced budget amendments, and they still wind up in fiscal problems all the time.
On this issue, though, I'm still so overwhelmed by what the president had to say yesterday to Scott Pelley of CBS News, that he said, I can't guarantee that we're going to send out the Social Security checks. And this couldn't be more wrong because there'll be plenty of money to send out Social Security checks unless the president decides that's not how he wants to spend the money. It will be in his back. It will be his decision to make if there is no raising of the debt limit. He'll have money coming in. He'll just have to decide where it goes.
Well, and
so if there's no Social Security checks, the only person who would be making that decision at that time would be the President of the United States.
He also says that he has all those hundreds of thousands of extra dollars, so I think he could just write the checks.
Could you believe that?
Send out a couple because that belongs to the government anyway, according to the Obama philosophy. So I say just write the checks himself.
His statement yesterday was astonishing. He said, I'm not going to pass, I'm not going to go along with any idea that doesn't allow me to give more money to the government, in effect.
So that allows me to keep unnecessary
money that I don't need. That's what he said. Well, look, that may be good for the president. I guess the president doesn't need all the money he makes. When you're president of the United States, you very rarely spend money out of pocket. I, on the other hand, would have to pay my bills, etc., and I would like to keep that money that he thinks I don't need.
Byron York, chief political correspondent, Washington Examiner, joins us now with the Morning Majority. All right, Byron, you've been hearing, you've been on to this story for quite some time. Where do we stand right now? The McConnell plan that came out yesterday, can you kind of explain how that would work, and would there be enough Republicans to get on board with the McConnell plan?
Well, I think Bill Kristol said it best. It seems too clever by half and way too complicated. It's a plan in which it's a blame escape plan for Republicans, in which Mitch McConnell said we in the Senate will not be a party to default. Basically, it would give the president the power by himself to raise the debt limit, I think a total of $2.5 trillion in three separate pieces if the Congress doesn't stop him There could be constitutional issues with it, but basically the point is Republicans are saying, well, gee, if we can't get any real spending cuts, we'll let Obama raise the debt limit and we'll blame him and the Democrats. It's something that's driving a lot of Republicans just nuts.
All right, so it doesn't seem like there's a lot of support for it. So even if it's a last-ditch effort, it's an effort that's not going to have support from Republicans, so it can't pass.
Well, that's probably true. Certainly, it's certainly not in the House, and there'll be some support in the Senate, but Jim DeMint and others have already come out and said they don't support it. But Republicans do face a problem here. Mm-hmm. The Wall Street Journal editorial board, which actually wrote positively about the plan yesterday, quoted Phil Gramm saying years ago, "Don't ever take a hostage you're not prepared to shoot." The problem is a lot of Republicans believe the debt limit must be increased. And if they believe that, then they don't have the leverage against President Obama in these negotiations because they believe in the end the limit has to be increased. So are Republicans really prepared to go all the way to the limit on this? And the answer right now is no.
Right.
Well, the leadership's not, but aren't there certain members, especially in the House, that are willing to go that far?
Oh, I was speaking as if unanimously prepared. They're absolutely not prepared. Yes, there are a lot of rank and file who absolutely are prepared to vote no, to not vote for any increase in the debt limit, and see what happens. I was at a Tea Party event with Newt Gingrich in North Charleston, South Carolina last night. And everybody I talked to was very hard line on this. They were ready to refuse to raise the debt limit and insist on cuts, and if they don't happen, let what you would call a partial government shutdown happen.
Well, and here's my question. I tend to think that, okay, probably the debt limit needs to be increased because you don't want the market to freak out and tank but I'm very conservative, and so if I'm trying to imagine if I were in the House and I hear Biden telling me the compromise deal saves $2 billion in year one, which is just a ridiculously low number, it feels almost equally irresponsible to vote for a deal like that.
Mary Catherine, I think you just synopsized the problem, which is you're not prepared to see not default. You're not prepared to see what happens in this event. You feel that the debt limit needs to be raised. Then the question is this really the right fight to be having over spending? Spending, yes, that is the right fight. But is it the right thing to do it over a debt limit that some Republicans believe is going to have to be raised in the end?
Yeah,
do you think that there's been talk of, a constitutional amendment that forces Congress to balance the budget? If that was attached to a bill, that it's possible that some Republicans who don't want to raise the debt ceiling period could get on board with that if it is actually, put up to a vote?
Well, Senator DeMint has been pushing that very hard. I mean, for months he's been saying, I'm not going to support any presidential candidate who doesn't support a balanced budget amendment. But amending the Constitution is a long and hard requirement. And even then, as many safeguards as are put into the amendment, Congress has to have the power to raise and spend money. There will be an out for it, and a lot of people believe that a balanced budget amendment will not do, even though it will take an enormous amount of time to pass and doesn't have the political support to do it, even if it were in the Constitution, it would not stop these deficits.
Yeah. Do we know if the president would even sign a balanced budget amendment?
Well, you have to remember you have to have 2/3 support in the House and the Senate for this thing to pass, and it's just very, very unlikely that it would even get to that point.
I don't think you can get there.
And then, of course, you have to have approval by the 3/4 of the state legislature, so that's huge.
All right, Byron, good to talk to you as always. Appreciate your time.
Great to be here, guys.
Byron York, Chief Political Correspondent, Washington.